Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through the collapse of an illusion. For decades, the so-called globalist elite told us they had designed a world without borders, without limits, and without accountability. They sold us the dream of endless wars for democracy, endless spending for progress, and endless propaganda to keep us quiet. But now, their house of cards is crumbling, and the entire world is beginning to see it. Illusions always collapse. That is the unshakable truth of history, and it is the lesson we are now witnessing before our very eyes. For decades, the architects of globalization promised the world a system that could not fail. They told us that if we surrendered sovereignty, if we dismantled borders, if we abandoned the hard virtues of discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice, we would inherit prosperity without limits. They promised peace through endless war, security through surveillance, and progress through debt. But every one of these promises was an illusion, and illusions are destined to shatter. You cannot cheat reality forever. The power of illusion lies not in its strength, but in its ability to deceive, and deception works only for a season. The globalist elite built their empire on appearances, on numbers printed by central banks, on treaties that ignored human nature, on propaganda that demanded blind obedience. They wrapped failure in the language of success and called it leadership. But here is the truth. You cannot build a lasting foundation on sand. And when the winds of history shift, sand is the first thing to scatter. Look around today and you will see the walls of that empire cracking, its foundation crumbling under the weight of its own falsehoods. The collapse you see today is not an accident. It is not the result of a single policy, a single leader, or a single crisis. It is the inevitable consequence of living by lies. Every nation, every empire that has chosen to worship illusions rather than reality has marched down the same path. Rome believed it could consume without replenishing its strength. The Soviet Union believed it could silence truth forever. The globalist order believed it could erase the nation, state, silence tradition, and replace it all with a single managerial class. All of them discovered the same law: illusions do not bend reality, reality breaks illusions. Think about the world we are living in. We are told debt is wealth, that printing money creates prosperity. But every household knows the truth: when you spend more than you earn, collapse is only a matter of time. We are told wars of choice are noble crusades, spreading freedom abroad, but ask the soldiers who fought in deserts and mountains for decades. What freedom did it bring? What stability did it secure? We are told surveillance is safety, that censorship protects us from harm. But history teaches that societies built on fear are not safe, they are brittle, ready to crack the moment people refuse to comply. These are the illusions of our time, and they are dying. Do not mistake collapse for chaos alone. Collapse is a revelation. It strips away the comforting lies and exposes what was always there. When the globalist empire falls apart, it will not simply be because of external enemies or foreign rivals. It will fall because it was weak at its core. It will fall because it was unnatural, denying the very principles that sustain nations: sovereignty, culture, discipline, and truth. Collapse is reality reclaiming its ground. And reality is merciless to those who try to ignore it. Here is where we find hope. If illusions collapse, then truth endures. If lies fade, reality remains. This is why collapse, as frightening as it seems, should not fill us with despair. It should ignite resolve. Every empire that falls creates space for renewal. Every illusion that shatters gives way to clarity. We are not witnessing the end of history. We are witnessing the end of a false chapter. And that end is our opportunity. The question is not whether illusions collapse. They always do. The question is whether we will be ready when they fall. Will we be the people who cling to the wreckage of the old order? Or will we be the people who seize the chance to build something real? This is the hook I leave with you. Illusions are collapsing before us faster and louder than anyone imagined. Reality is calling, and it demands courage and vision and resolve. Those who answer that call will shape what comes next. Those who refuse will be swept away with the ruins of the illusion. The choice is ours, and the time is now. Strength comes from patience, not from reckless displays of force or desperate attempts to prove power. This is a truth that civilizations often forget when they are at their peak. The illusion of invincibility makes leaders believe that constant action is the same as strength. But history tells a different story. Real power is not measured in how quickly a nation reacts, but in how wisely it chooses when and where to act. Patience is not weakness. It is the highest form of discipline. It is the weapon of those who understand that time, not impulse, decides victories. Who is exhausting their resources and who is conserving them, who is constantly entangled in conflicts that yield no gain, and who is waiting quietly, watching as opponents burn themselves out. Nations that believe power lies in endless wars are like athletes who sprint at the start of a marathon. They waste their strength long before the real contest begins. That is the danger of confusing noise for endurance, action for strategy. Patience, though mocked by the impatient, is the virtue that decides who stands when others fall. The strongest players on the global stage are not those who shout the loudest or move the fastest. They are those who understand that restraint itself is a form of power. To wait while others rush headlong into mistakes is not cowardice, it is wisdom. It is the wisdom of a commander who watches an enemy stretch their lines too thin before striking. It is the wisdom of a leader who knows that storms pass, that time exposes weaknesses, and that the impatient will always defeat themselves. This is how strength is preserved, and this is how victories are secured without waste. Consider the way resources are spent. Reckless nations drain their treasuries on wars of choice, spread their armies thin, and pour energy into illusions of control. They do this because they fear standing still. But those who master patience conserve. They build quietly. They choose carefully. They wait for the moment when the enemy is not just vulnerable, but broken by his own hand. That is when strength reveals itself, not in endless skirmishes, but in decisive action at the right time. And when that moment comes, it belongs not to the loudest, but to the most disciplined. There is a kind of fearlessness in patience. It takes courage to wait when the world screams at you to act. It takes resolve to resist the temptation of quick victories, of shallow headlines, of the appearance of power. Impulsive leaders act to feed their egos, to satisfy their need for recognition. Patient leaders act to win. And here lies the lesson: true strength is silent until it must speak, hidden until it must strike, restrained until it is unstoppable. A bow is useless without tension, without the discipline to hold it drawn until the right target presents itself. The arrow released too early misses the mark. Nations are no different. Without patience, their power is squandered. With patience, their power becomes precise, overwhelming, and undeniable. The enemy who acts too soon is already defeated by his own haste. The one who waits has already chosen the ground on which the final battle will be fought. Those who run ahead often find themselves alone, exposed, and exhausted. Those who hold back, conserving strength, arrive at the moment of truth with energy unbroken and purpose intact. The impatient may seem powerful in the moment, but their fire burns out quickly. The patient seem quiet, but when their fire comes, it consumes everything. This is the paradox of strength. Those who rush lose, and those who wait win. So as the global stage shifts, understand this: the future will not belong to the reckless. It will not belong to those who mistake constant movement for progress or endless wars for power. The future will belong to those who can endure, who can wait, who can resist the temptation of noise in favor of the clarity of time. Strength comes from patience, and patience is the sharpest weapon of all. Those who wield it will inherit the moment when all others have already burned themselves out. Weak systems fall from within, And this is the law of power that no empire, no alliance, and no government can escape. History is filled with examples of civilizations that believed their walls, their armies, or their wealth would protect them forever. Yet, the walls crumbled, the armies dissolved, and the wealth vanished, not because an outside enemy destroyed them, but because rot from within made collapse inevitable. A system that looks mighty on the surface, but is hollow at the core, cannot withstand pressure. When the storms of reality arrive, it is not the enemy's strike that destroys it. It is the weakness already embedded deep inside. Every weak system has the same flaw: it ignores truth. Leaders lie to themselves, institutions pretend to be stronger than they are, and people are told to believe in illusions rather than face reality. For a time, these lies can hold things together. Propaganda can create the image of strength, financial tricks can make the economy look alive, and speeches can promise victories that never come. But illusions are like paint on rotting wood. They may look solid from the outside, but when pressure is applied, the entire structure collapses in an instant. Here is the hook: enemies do not defeat weak systems. Weak systems defeat themselves. Consider the lessons of great empires. Rome did not fall because barbarian tribes were stronger than Rome's legions. Rome fell because corruption, decadence, and complacency ate away at the heart of its society. The Soviet Union did not collapse because it was invaded. It collapsed because the weight of its own inefficiency, its lies, and its repression crushed it from within. Weak systems always spend more time fighting their own contradictions than they do preparing for external threats. By the time the enemy arrives, the system has already hollowed itself out. The greatest danger to a nation is not what an enemy plans against it, but what its own leaders and elites do to it through arrogance and dishonesty. When governments waste resources on wars that cannot be won, when they drown their people in debt, when they replace merit with loyalty to ideology, they are not building strength. They are planting seeds of collapse. And when those seeds grow, they grow fast. Weakness does not show itself gradually, it erupts suddenly, and the fall is always swifter than anyone expects. You can measure the strength of a system not by its size, not by the money it spends, not even by the weapons it holds, but by its internal discipline. A strong system corrects mistakes, rewards competence, and adapts to reality. A weak system hides mistakes, rewards mediocrity, and denies reality until it is too late. That is the difference between endurance and collapse. Systems that are honest with themselves endure. Systems that lie to themselves implode. We see this truth unfolding in real time. And nations that were once proud of their discipline and sovereignty are now entangled in division, drowning in debt, and led by people who mistake appearances for substance. They shout about unity while silencing dissent, boast about wealth while printing money from nothing, and claim strength while overextending in conflicts that weaken them further. These are not signs of strength, they are signals of decay. And decay always begins from within. Weak systems also destroy the morale of their own people. When citizens lose faith in institutions, when they see corruption rewarded and honesty punished, when sacrifice is demanded but never honored, the bond between the people and the state breaks. And once that bond is broken, no amount of force can hold the system together. The people withdraw their loyalty, and without loyalty, no government, no matter how powerful it appears, can stand. That is why history shows us again and again that collapse is not imposed from outside, it erupts from within. Weak systems fall not because their enemies are strong, but because they themselves become unworthy of survival. The illusion of strength can last for years, even decades, but the reckoning always comes. And when it does, it comes swiftly, decisively, without mercy. The hook is clear. True strength comes from within. And when that inner core is corrupted, the collapse is only a matter of time. What we are witnessing today is not the rise of unstoppable enemies, but the slow implosion of systems that have betrayed their own foundations. The enemy does not need to destroy them. They are already destroying themselves. Collapse creates opportunity, though most people fear it as if it were the end of the world. Collapse strips away the illusions we've been taught to trust, and in that moment of destruction lies the chance to build something stronger, truer, and more lasting. The collapse of a system is not merely the end of an order, it is the clearing of ground for a new one. The mistake too many make is to believe that when institutions, economies, or empires fall, nothing will replace them. But history has never left a void for long. When one order dies, another emerges. The only question is who will shape it. Think of collapse as a great storm. It tears down what is weak, what was built carelessly, and what was never meant to endure. Buildings fall, structures crack, and familiar landscapes disappear. Yet, when the storm passes, the ground is clearer than before. Weakness has been exposed, falsehoods have been washed away, and those with vision now have the chance to rebuild on stronger foundations. That is the hook. Collapse is terrifying, yes, but it is also the single greatest opportunity for renewal. Only those willing to endure it and seize it can turn destruction into rebirth. Throughout history, collapse has been the crucible of transformation. The fall of Rome unleashed centuries of chaos, but also gave birth to new nations, new cultures, and new ways of organizing power. The collapse of the medieval order led to the Renaissance and the rise of modern states. Even the disintegration of the Soviet Union opened paths for nations to rediscover sovereignty, culture, and identity. Collapse is not a void, it is a reset. And in that reset lies the chance to decide what values, what principles, and what truths will define the next chapter. But here is the danger. Collapse alone guarantees nothing. It is not automatically an opportunity for something better. It is only an opportunity for those bold enough to act, to step forward while others retreat into fear. The timid cling to the ruins of the past, hoping the old system will somehow return. The brave, however, see the ruins as raw material for building something new. Collapse divides people into two groups, those who despair and those who lead. Which side we fall on will determine whether collapse becomes tragedy or transformation. Consider how collapse exposes false leaders. When the old structures fail, those who depended on illusions for power are revealed as frauds. Their promises no longer carry weight. Their authority disintegrates with the system that sustained it. This is why collapse terrifies elites. They know that when the mask is torn away, they will be powerless. But this is also why collapse empowers the courageous. In the silence that follows the fall of the old, new voices can rise. That is the hook. Collapse clears the stage. The actors who step onto it next will write the story of the future. The key is preparation, both of the mind and the spirit. Collapse demands resilience. It demands that we hold firm to principles that endure when everything else crumbles. Sovereignty, truth, discipline, and courage. These are the cornerstones that can outlast the collapse of any empire or economy. If we anchor ourselves to these, collapse becomes not a threat but a test, and those who pass the test emerge stronger, wiser, and freer than before. Collapse is the fire that refines steel for more. It is not the end of strength. It is how true strength is forged. Collapse is not the enemy. It is the inevitable correction of systems that have strayed too far from truth. When the false falls away, what remains is what was real all along. The collapse of the globalist order, the collapse of corruption, the collapse of illusions. These are not defeats, they are opportunities. Opportunities to rebuild, opportunities to reclaim, opportunities to shape a future that belongs not to those who deceived us, but to those who endured, who believed, and who refused to bow. Collapse creates opportunity, and that opportunity belongs to the bold. Courage over complacency is the dividing line between those who shape history and those who are forgotten by it. Every era faces moments where the choice is clear: either summon the courage to face uncomfortable truths or retreat into the false safety of complacency. Complacency is easy, comfortable, and tempting. It whispers that tomorrow will look like today, that someone else will bear the burden, that nothing is required of us but silence. But courage is different. Courage demands risk, sacrifice, and the willingness to step into the storm when others hide. The future does not belong to the complacent, it belongs to the courageous. Complacency is the slow poison of nations. It convinces people to tolerate corruption, to accept mediocrity, to allow lies to pass unchallenged. Over time, complacency erodes the foundations of society more effectively than any foreign enemy could. A complacent people stop asking questions, stop demanding accountability, and stop expecting better from their leaders. They trade freedom for comfort, truth for convenience, sovereignty for illusions. And by the time they realize what they have lost, it is already too late. That is the danger of complacency. It never seems dangerous until collapse arrives. Courage is the antidote. It is courage that allows ordinary men and women to break the spell of complacency, to say enough when others remain silent. Courage does not require armies or wealth, it requires conviction. It requires the refusal to go along with what you know to be false, even when it is easier to stay quiet. It is courage that lights the fire of resistance, courage that keeps truth alive, courage that inspires others to rise. One act of courage can awaken thousands from the slumber of complacency. Think about the leaders who shaped history. They were not the ones who followed the easy road. They were the ones who took risks when others doubted, who stood firm when others wavered. They were often ridiculed, attacked, and resisted at first, but in the end, it was their courage that shifted the course of nations. The complacent are forgotten because they added nothing, changed nothing, risked nothing. The courageous are remembered because they carried the weight others would not bear. This is the law of history. Courage is remembered. Complacency is erased. Courage is not reckless bravado. True courage is grounded in clarity and principle. It is the discipline to act, not out of impulse, but out of conviction. It is the soldier who stands his ground though outnumbered, the citizen who speaks truth though silenced, the leader who makes decisions not for applause, but for survival. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. Courage acts in spite of fear, while complacency bows to it. That is why courage builds nations and complacency destroys them. Courage is contagious. One act of defiance, one refusal to bow, one demand for truth can ripple outward and awaken a people. When courage is displayed openly, it gives others permission to be brave as well. The walls of complacency are high, but they are fragile. Once a single crack appears, once a single courageous act breaks through, the flood of truth cannot be stopped. Courage multiplies, complacency collapses when confronted by it. Every society reaches a moment when the cost of complacency becomes unbearable. That is the moment we are living in now. The illusions are crumbling, the weaknesses are exposed, and the lies are harder to maintain. The elites count on complacency to carry them through, to keep people docile and distracted. But history does not bend to complacency, it bends to courage. The people who will inherit the future are not those who sat quietly while everything collapsed around them. The people who will inherit the future are those who had the courage to rise, to resist, to speak, and to act. Courage is the weapon that no empire, no tyranny, no illusion can withstand. Complacency is surrender without a fight, but courage is victory before the battle even begins. The choice is stark, the hour is late, and the need is urgent. Courage over complacency, that is the test before us. And those who pass it will write the next chapter of history. The future is ours to claim, but only if we have the will to reach for it. History does not pause for indecision, and it does not reward hesitation. It moves relentlessly, guided not by the comfortable or the complacent, but by those bold enough to seize the moment. The future is never given as a gift. It is taken by those who have the courage to shape it. Every generation faces a defining test, and ours is unfolding before us. The systems we were told were unshakable are breaking apart. The illusions we were told to trust are dissolving, and the old order is collapsing under its own weight. In this moment, the door to the future stands open, but it will not remain open forever. The temptation in times of upheaval is to wait for someone else to lead, to believe that fate alone will carry us into a better tomorrow. But fate has no loyalty to the timid. It favors those who take decisive action, those who step into the breach when others falter. The future belongs to those who refuse to let fear dictate their choices. It belongs to those who understand that opportunity is rarely convenient and never without risk. The greatest victories in history were won not because the odds were easy, but because someone believed the future was worth claiming despite the cost. The future is always claimed twice, first in the mind, then in reality. Those who see themselves as powerless will always live in the shadow of others. Those who see themselves as actors in history, as builders, as leaders, create a future that reflects their vision. Every great transformation began with this inner claim, the unshakable belief that tomorrow can be seized, shaped, and made into something greater. Without this conviction, the future slips away, claimed by those bold enough to act while others merely watched. Look at the patterns of history. Nations that rose from nothing did so because a people decided they would no longer accept the conditions handed to them. They did not wait for permission. They did not wait for the perfect moment. They seized the moment that existed and made it theirs. Those who hesitate, who wait for safety, who cling to the ruins of the old world, are always swept aside. The future does not bend to those who wait. It bends to those who move forward when others stand still. The collapse of the globalist system, the weakening of false institutions, and the unraveling of illusions are not the end of our story. They are the beginning of our opportunity. The old order is falling because it betrayed reality. It tried to rule with lies, to enforce obedience with fear, to build prosperity on debt and deception. It cannot stand because it was never sustainable. And now, in its place, something new must rise. That something will be determined not by those who cling to illusions, but by those willing to step forward and claim the future with courage, clarity, and conviction. Claiming the future does not mean waiting for rescue. It means becoming the rescue. It means taking responsibility when others shrink from it. It means refusing to be a spectator to your own destiny. The question is never whether the future will be written. The question is who will write it. And right now, in this moment, that responsibility lies before us. If we fail to claim it, others will, and the world they create will not be one we want to inherit. The future is not a guarantee, it is a battlefield. Every idea, every value, every decision competes to define it. And the decisive factor is not strength alone, but will. The will to endure, the will to rise, the will to believe that history is not something happening to us, but something being shaped through us. That is why courage, truth, and discipline matter. They are the tools that allow us to not merely survive collapse, but to use it as the foundation for a greater era. The future will belong to someone. The question is whether it will belong to those who built their power on lies or to those who refuse to bow to them. It will belong either to those who manipulate fear or to those who master it. It will belong either to the complacent who surrendered their chance or to the courageous who seized it. The future is ours to claim, but only if we step forward now before the window closes. History is calling, and it will remember who answered.